Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. You could have been anywhere in the world on this beautiful 80-degree weather day, but you chose to be here at the Town Hall with Congressman Olszewski, and we are happy to have you here. My name is Mandy Remmel. I am the district director for the Congressman, and excited to welcome you all this evening. I'd like to first welcome up, before we begin, Randallstown High School Principal, Ms. Principal Jones, to say a few words.
Good evening again, and thank you everybody for coming out this evening and spending your time with us. What I would like to say, not only as a principal at Randallstown High School, but as a member of this district as well, it's great to see people come out, want to join together, share perspective, and show value. For me, as a principal, it's a blessing, and I would be remiss without acknowledging Jordan, our student in the booth, and our other students and staff that are here helping today, because our worth and our value and our work is shown through the young people that we work with. And so tonight, I know we are set up for an amazing evening, and for you all to share your perspective and determine what that next step in value of work looks like. So again, thank you for coming. I appreciate you all, and on behalf of Randallstown High School, please let's get together and combine for an amazing evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Jones. I'd also like to go ahead and acknowledge the elected officials who have joined us this evening. First, we have Bart Kennedy representing Senator Chris Van Hollen. We have Mayor Kevin Cornick, Town of New Windsor in Carroll County. And then from the Central Committee, we have Tyrod Haynes, Diana Bergman, and Jennifer Dwyer. Thank you all for joining. Community engagement and strong constituent services remains the driving force behind the work that we do in the federal government. Opportunities like tonight allow us to hear directly from our neighbors, our residents, and community members about the issues that matter most. This evening, the Congressman will share some updates on his work in Washington and here in the district. After his presentation, we will open the program for questions from the audience, as well as pre-submitted questions that we received. After his presentation, a member from our team will bring the mic to the audience, and you will have an opportunity to raise your hand. We will work our way from the front of the auditorium back with questions. And again, we've received about 260 pre-submitted questions. While we won't get to all of them here this evening, we will sprinkle in a few pre-submitted questions and incorporate those through tonight's program, as well as hear directly from the audience. So if you pre-submitted a question and you are here this evening, you can feel free to ask your question at the mic. If we are unable to get to your question this evening, we ask that you please submit an email to caseworkmd02@mail.house.gov. You can submit your question there, and a member from our district office will follow up with you directly. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce your Congressman, Johnny Olszewski.
Well, thank you so much, Mandy, and good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I first want to thank Principal Jones and his team here at Randallstown for their very gracious hosting of tonight's town hall. This is really an extension of the work that we did as Baltimore County Executive, and so it's great to see so many familiar faces, but also to welcome new faces, as I have the privilege and honor of representing Maryland's 2nd Congressional District in Congress. Being with you here tonight in Randallstown, I have to say, is a breath of fresh air. It's a chance to step away from the noise and the dysfunction that we've seen in DC, to be home here with people who understand that progress matters more than partisanship, and how we treat each other matters. And so I look forward to respectfully having a discussion and discourse with all of you tonight about the work that we're doing. And I will just say that since I've been sworn in last January, my team and I have made it a priority to be in the community and to be active as much as possible, Collectively, we've attended more than 400 community events, and this is just in 1 year. Tonight is the 13th town hall that I've either hosted or been a part of since I've become a member of Congress, because that's my job. My job is to represent you, to listen to you, and to fight for the policies that support Maryland families. And I'm proud to say that in just a year, we've already seen some real results from that commitment. Over the past year alone, I'm very proud to say our office has directly assisted more than 1,500 constituents navigating federal agencies and navigating complex issues. And that's a huge hat tip to Mandy and the entire district office team for the great work that they do day in and day out. Whether it's helping a veteran receive the benefits they've earned, making sure that our seniors get the Social Security payments they rely on, or resolving urgent passport needs, we are there, and I think we've built the strongest casework team in the country. That team has already returned $2.9 million directly back into the pockets of Maryland's 2nd District. That's money that belongs to you, and so if you ever have a request or a need relative to a federal agency, please reach out to Mandy and the district team. They will be available tonight and moving forward. We've also been able to deliver real investments for our community. I'm very proud as a freshman to have secured $15 million of federal funding across the 2nd Congressional District, whether it's supporting our firefighters and first responders, community colleges, nursing education programs, health research initiatives. We've been there on the front lines working with you. There's funding that will help improve the runway at Martin State Airport, upgrade the interchange at I-75 and Dolefield Boulevard in Owings Mills, and replace lampposts along the Reisterstown Street corridor. All right, we like that. And we're already working to secure even more resources as we begin the 2027 appropriations cycle, so please see Mandy or a member of the team if you have questions there. On the legislative side, I'm happy to report that I've led already 3 bills that have passed the House. They've been bipartisan bills. And those bills have focused on port security, advancing international diplomacy, and connecting career and technical education graduates with those in-demand jobs. I've also been proud to lead efforts to check the administration's overreach, introducing a bipartisan constitutional amendment that would give Congress the authority to overturn what I think are corrupt and immoral presidential pardons. I've joined the cause to release the Epstein files, all of them, because no one is above the law, and I've been leading the fight to protect our hardworking federal workers from President Trump's efforts to dismantle our civil service. We know that we are facing serious challenges at the federal level. We're in the middle of a partial government shutdown as Congress debates reforms to this administration's, I think, wrong, misguided, and lawless immigration enforcement policy. And to be clear, I think that's a fight worth having. We're confronting a war that has not been authorized by Congress or fully vetted by the American people. And we're in the midst of a cost of living crisis, which in my view is still the single most important issue facing families in Maryland and across this country. Unfortunately, many of the policies I've seen passed in this last year have only served to make that challenge even harder. And I know many of you are living that each and every day. In the past year alone, we've seen massive cuts to health care and food assistance. We've seen rising costs to everyday goods because of tariffs. And all of this is being done to finance tax cuts that disproportionately benefit the wealthiest of the wealthiest Americans. It is the largest wealth transfer in our nation's history. And in doing all of that, we are still adding $4 trillion to our nation's debt. And yet somehow Washington still finds the way to have billions of dollars for luxury jets, a White House ballroom, and then turn a blind eye to insider stock trading and international bailouts. Bailouts I oppose, and stock trading I will never do as your United States Congressman. That's not the priorities Americans deserve. Because I want you to know this. This is an important fight. And I am and I will fight for you every day. in Congress, in the courts, and right here in the community. Because I think protecting our democracy and leading with decency are North Stars worth keeping. I'm not in this for the headlines. I'm in this to fight for each and every one of you and your families. As I hope you've seen, my door is and always will be open. And so with that, I'm going to cut my remarks short here so that we can spend the rest of the night doing what matters most, hearing directly from you and answering your questions. As Mandy mentioned, the good news is over 250 of you have already submitted questions. The bad news is we only have this space until 8 p.m. So I think we're going to start tonight with one or two of those online questions and then move to a mix of several in-person questions and then try to get to some of those pre-submitted questions tonight. If we do not get to every question, and we certainly will not get to all of you plus the pre-submitted questions, please know this: we will answer every question that was submitted. Every single last question will get a response. And if you don't get to ask a question tonight and you haven't already submitted, I would encourage you to submit it virtually by emailing. Is it up there, the casework? Oh, up top, thank you very much. By emailing caseworkmd02@mail.house.gov. Again, everyone who submits a question will receive a response. And so with that, I will turn things back over to our district director to go over instructions for the night, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Congressman. As the Congressman mentioned, we will start with a couple pre-submitted questions, and then we will turn it over to the audience for live questions. I do have two of our team members this evening, Will here and Perry on this side. They both have microphones, and they will run the, ooh, hello, house lights. We will run the microphone all the way. We'll run it here, and then she will run it on this side. So when we get to the audience Q&A, we will just ask that you raise your hand if you have a question in the front row. We will bring the mic to you, and then we ask that you pass the mic back, please, and then the congressman will answer your question or any ideas that you have to share with him as well. And then we'll go row by row by row. We're going to start with pre-submitted. I do want to let you know, though, that if you have a question this evening or a comment that you'd like to share, we are asking that you please limit your all comments or questions to 90 seconds. We have a timer up here, so we will start. That timer will start as soon as you start talking. It's got a lovely little buzzer, and when that buzzer wraps, we ask that your questions are wrapped after that. So thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you this evening. We're going to go ahead and start with the first question. The first question of the evening comes from Kyle of Hampstead. Kyle says, Congressman, how are you, as our representative, making sure that Democrat lawmakers push back against President Trump instead of backing down?
Great question from Kyle in Hampstead. We need to remember as a Congress that we are a co-equal branch of government. Before I came to Congress, I had the privilege of being an American government teacher in Baltimore County Public Schools. Congress is the Article I branch of government. We have the power to declare war, we have the power to raise revenue, and we need to reassert that authority. What I can tell you is Congress is also a body of over 400 individuals, and so asserting that authority requires the votes. And so being in the minority as a member of Congress, it is harder than it would be in the other circumstance. But what I can tell you is I mentioned the three places we're fighting back. We're fighting back not just in Congress. And as I mentioned, I'm proud to lead not just a constitutional amendment that would check the president on things, on pardons, but to do that in a bipartisan way with Don Bacon of Nebraska, but to also explore, for example, legislation that would require congressional approval for the $15 billion that President Trump is trying to sue himself for to pay himself from the United States Treasury. It is this example, though, of where the wealthy and the well-connected are getting away with things that the average person never could. And it's why people are frustrated by the Epstein files and the fact that Pam Bondi and the president are not enforcing a law that he signed. There are over 3 million documents not released at all, and there are several million documents that only members of Congress can see unredacted, which is not what the law says at all. So we're going to keep pushing there. We're going to keep pushing in the courts, and I've filed amicus briefs, and I've supported other organizations that are filing lawsuits to make sure that we get questions answers and that we're pushing back against things that are clearly out of bounds, like the judge's ruling recently that said members of Congress do have oversight ability to go into ICE facilities to do oversight responsibilities. And I joined our senators and Representative Mfume just earlier this week to do that. But we also are seeing judges say things like the president cannot unilaterally enact tariffs and pretend like it's an emergency. So we are supporting efforts in the court, but I will say the last thing is the community. And the work that you all do is so important, and I've seen so many of you, not just at town halls, but at protests, you call into us, you write into us, and talking to us, to our U.S. senators, to other members of the Maryland delegation, your presence and your voice makes a difference. And so the one thing that you're doing every day, and tonight it's obviously being here, but posting on social media, making those calls, they all matter, and collectively, I think we will ultimately hold this administration accountable and assert ourselves, but it is not going to happen overnight, and it's going to take all of us.
Thank you, Congressman. Mark from Randallstown writes in, have you made any significant relationships with anyone on the other side of the aisle?
That's a great question. The answer is yes. And candidly, I went to Congress drawing on what I thought was going to be my time as Baltimore County Executive. I was proud that as Baltimore County Executive, we balanced budgets, we invested record funding in school and recreation and parks, we did police reform, we did gun safety legislation, and it was all bipartisan. We had 4 Democrats and 3 Republicans, and we talked to each other, and we got stuff done. And what I've learned in this moment is that we talked about having the votes to get things done, is that as much as I disagree with some of my Republican colleagues on some of these issues, the first conversation I have with them can't be how much we don't get along. If the beginning of the conversation is, how is your family? How is your daughter? It changes the paradigm entirely. Because my goal is to bring folks around to see what's happening, to see the pain that so many of you are facing, and to want to work together. That's how we've passed 3 bills out of the House as a first-year freshman. It's how we've gotten Don Bacon to sign on a really consequential constitutional amendment to rein in the abuses of the pardon. Now, don't get me wrong, we vote very differently, but when we're on the baseball field, when I'm having mixers that are bipartisan, that work is about serving this district better and serving this country better. Because at the end of the day, I want my colleagues to want to do what I think is the right thing. But I can only do that best when I actually spend time with them and build those relationships. So I do spend time doing that, and we have had some success. And I think we have to remember, like, our neighbors, our neighborhoods, there are people of different political affiliations and parties everywhere. Now, I happen to have a particular registration, and I feel very strongly for a lot of the positions that Democrats take. But I have learned throughout my life and my career that, like, we have to be willing to have conversations with people who think differently, who have had different experiences, because that is the best way to have sustainable solutions. And so while I am forcefully pushing back against Trump, I do think that that's an important part of the work too.
Great, thank you. All right, we are going to open it up for questions here to the audience. We will start in the front row here. We'll start on the right side of the auditorium. So if you are in the front row and you have a question, raise your hand or a comment for the congressman, and we will bring you the mic. Looks like we have one on this side.
Hello, sir. Thank you very much for coming in, for having this. And I did submit the question, but since you give me the opportunity to present it, I will. And you can educate me, maybe I'm missing something. The House and the Senate has the opportunity when they go before the floor that when they say something, they're protected by the speech and debate clause.
Yep.
So my question to you, and I pose this to also Brooks and Van Hollen, is there any way that you and your staff meet with those young women to get those names and then broadcast those names on the floor, because you're covered. And that way also the rest of the nation can know what we're dealing with regard to the personnel dealing with Epstein at that time. And then it's a two-part question. Sure. The other part is, it's related. You mentioned about paying bonding. My question is, it's a law now, so why doesn't the House, maybe you in particular, file suit that they're not, and I hate to waste government time filing lawsuits, but that's one way to get their attention. They're not doing their job, so we're gonna hold you account to do the job, to bring those files forward, as you mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to work backwards, actually, and I'll start with the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. She is clearly in contempt of Congress at this point. Clearly. And she has acknowledged that she is not going to share more files, even though she's also shared there are more files. Like, it is clearly in violation of the law. What you need to do to have a contempt of Congress charge brought forward, though, and the House of Representatives does have that, and this is why I think it really matters who is in control, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats, because the House Oversight Committee can issue those contempt of Congress. They can issue those subpoenas. So I will say, Representative Mace and a few other Republicans did join with Democrats to subpoena Pam Bondi, so she is now being forced to come testify before Congress, but I don't think that there are the votes in this Congress, at least at this point, to hold her in contempt, something I would certainly support. Because I think if you are not following a lawful order of the Congress, you are in contempt. It's pretty straightforward. But I think the votes matter in all of these conversations. I will say that people like Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, again, this is a Democrat and a Republican, have been leading on this. They've been meeting with the survivors. They have put names on the floor using the speech and debate clause. That's a very good pull. You would have done great in my American government class. But yeah, we are protected. And I have said that I've said to Judiciary Committee, which is largely doing this, that if I can be helpful, I want to do it. But I also want to make sure that we're being thoughtful about it. And I have not engaged directly. I spent one vigil. This was before we passed the law with a bunch of the survivors. But I would never want to get in front of what they've gone through, and I'm not directly coordinating with them. So I respect that they have shown a lot of bravery in all this, because there are incredibly powerful men, and the men and some women who enabled it. And we're just now starting to see the tip of the iceberg of accountability as this information gets out. You saw the head of Marriott resign. You see Larry Summers of Harvard step down. You see the former prince in England get arrested, not explicitly to this, but to related activity. And I think it's the tip of the iceberg. And I don't mean to be sort of coy about this, but this is, if we get to the bottom of it, in my heart, just based on what I've seen already, the redacted files, the files that have been released, not knowing what's still out there, I really think this is a bigger cover-up than Watergate. And Watergate was a watershed moment in American history that took an American president down. I think that if what is in those files is tracked down and ever truly brought to life, this will be an even more seminal moment and a bigger scandal than Watergate ever was. Thank you.
All right. Finishing with the front row here, we're going to, okay, perfect. Move to the second.
All right, thank you. We thank you, Congressman, for inviting us to attend this evening's meeting, this town hall. We thank you for co-sponsoring and voting to open up the Epstein files. We thank you for working across the aisle to ensure our Social Security is here for us now and for decades to come. We seniors received a 2.8% increase, which is about $56 a month increase. We thank you, we'd appreciate that. Okay, so the primaries are coming in June. What is the Democratic Party's plan to organize people at the ground level to work together to elect representatives who will work for us and our interests. Where do we, the people, begin? Who will show us how to accomplish this? Is there a plan? The Democratic Party, we need to hear from you now.
So thank you for that and for your presence. I have to be a little careful not to veer too far into politics at a formal sanctioned event. And so I try to keep my conversation largely about policy. And we have to stand up for Social Security. Not only was it under assault, but we didn't even talk about DOGE yet. And the federal employees who were laid off at Social Security and the data that's been stolen and all of the other problems there. But as seniors are struggling to pay their bills, the increase is helpful. But the average Marylander on the Affordable Care Act, for example, saw a the average Maryland family saw a $4,700 increase to their health care increase. And so we have to have a plan and a strategy to address all of the things that affect cost of living, and I think Social Security is front and center. I wouldn't want to speak for the party writ large, but what I will do is I can say outside of this venue, I plan to be very active, and I'm happy to get your information and share sort of what I'm planning to do in terms of coordinating and organizing as we head up into the election cycle. Oh, good. Thank you. Oh, we got to give her the microphone back. If you are not signed up to the memo, thank you for being a subscriber. We encourage you to do it. We truly do try to give updates on what's happening on the Hill and hear from you. We have thousands of constituents that participate in our surveys. It is so helpful to get the feedback on the legislation and the issues before us. So thank you not only for being a subscriber, but for also participating. Thank you.
I have the next question teed up and ready to go, but before I do, I just wanted to acknowledge our 2 additional elected officials that came in. We have Councilman Julian Jones that came in, so thank you so much for being here. And we have the wonderful Delegate Alethea McCaskill as well, who is here. So thank you so much for coming.
And before you go, Mandy, if I may just say, I want to thank my partners in state and local government. I think I heard the mayor was acknowledged earlier, the council members, our state reps. We are blessed that we have such a great group of individuals in Maryland and here in Baltimore County and in our towns because we don't have towns in Baltimore County, our towns in Carroll. It's been a privilege and an honor to try to find solutions and working with them. So thank you all for your presence as well.
Perfect. All right, I believe, are we finished with the front row here? Oh, we have one more, and then we'll move on to the second row. Yep, she's got you. She'll give it to you.
Okay. Good evening. My question concerns the midterm elections. Does Congress as a whole have any concern about any attempt to cancel or obstruct or delay the midterm elections? And what can be done if there is an anticipation of that happening? Yeah. Can court action be taken requesting declaratory or injunctive relief to prevent Trump and his allies from completely destroying our election process this November?
Yeah. It's a great question. It's a great question. And it is, you know, our elections are it's the bedrock of what makes us unique in the world. It is what gives us the self-determination to move forward as a country. And so I will say I have deep concerns about the upcoming election. when you look at the subpoenas of voter files that have been done by the Trump administration in Georgia, I believe they now have tried to do that in North Carolina, Arizona. They've pushed Jared DeMarinis, who's an outstanding administrator of elections here in Maryland, to get Maryland data. You saw in Minneapolis, when the ICE operations were happening there, Pam Bondi said, well, just give us your voter data and we'll leave. This is real life, guys, right? Like, and so it is upon us. And what I will say is, like, I saw Rui and other local and state election officials as Baltimore County executive. These are people who don't mess around with partisanship. I mean, they take pride in getting the vote right, however the results shake out. And that included a 17-vote manual recount when I ran for county executive, but they're professionals. And there was never a doubt in my mind then that, like, whatever the result was, that it was the right result. And we have to be sure that we're not backsliding into a place where the results are called into question. And President Trump has already openly mused about past results. I will say, if Democrats are cheating, we're awfully bad at it, considering we've lost 2 of the last 3 presidential elections. But you look at things like the SAVE Act, right? Which is legislation that passed the House. I strongly opposed it. It's pending before the Senate. The president has said, I will not sign any piece of legislation unless you effectively get rid of the filibuster and pass the SAVE Act. Now, we can have an honest dialogue about whether or not voter ID should be required to vote. People, I think, of good faith can have differences of opinion on that, especially if the government gives everyone an ID so that they can go vote and that we're not disenfranchising people. But what people don't talk about when we talk about the SAVE Act is, A, we have this affordability crisis that we're doing nothing about 425 days later. There have been, does anyone know how many convictions there have been of voter fraud out of hundreds of millions of votes cast in this country? 77. It's like 0.00067%. And now look, if you commit voter fraud, it is a serious offense, and I think you should be held accountable to the law. And if we need to have a conversation about what those penalties are, let's do it. But this is a solution in search of a problem that not just requires voter ID, but could disenfranchise millions of women whose birth certificates don't match their ID. It is a bill that requires states to turn over their voter rolls in the legislation. It is a bill that effectively ends mail-in voting entirely. And so this is not about securing our elections. This is about disenfranchising, especially women and people of color in this country. And it's wrong. It's wrong. But your question is spot on. So we have to be vigilant about that. I trust our local election administrators. My fear is that we use, because there's also been a draft executive order, and this is the preemptive lawsuit, I think, Clay, that you're mentioning, this preemptive lawsuit against this draft executive order where the president thinks that he can just nationalize elections, where the Constitution is clear. Elections belong to the states. And so we should be talking, and we are talking to our lawyers about, it's hard to have standing if it's not actually been issued. And so as soon as those actions are taken, we are prepared to jump into action, not just in Congress, but the courts. And of course, we hope in the community that people say, this is not who we are. We will have our voices heard, and we'll keep fighting for that in the days ahead too. But thank you for the question.
Thank you, sir. We're going to go over here. We'll start on the left side now. We'll start here in the second row.
Good evening, Congressman. Crystal Cody here. I have a question. I have been speaking to a lot of Republicans who think Trump is getting another term. How real is that, and what is Congress doing to ensure that there is no audible? Some of the things that I'm hearing is if he can't run straight on the ballot, that he'll get J.D. Vance or someone to run for president, he runs as vice, and then they resign. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you're hearing?
I mean, this is no joke. There are not only constitutional amendments to give presidents a third term, and I say careful what you wish for if you pass that, like maybe President Obama comes back, gives Trump a run for his money, right? But, you know, but the Constitution is clear. Congress shouldn't have to do anything because presidents are limited to 2 terms, period. And so even if some judge were to rule to say you can be vice president, the line of succession would have to skip him and go to the Speaker of the House. But I have the better solution is like, let's just not be in that situation. But the talk is real. People not only have put in constitutional amendments for 3rd terms, there's bills to change airports to the president. There are bills to put money with the president's name on it. There are bills to put him on Mount Rushmore. These are literal pieces of legislation in the United States Congress. People can't afford their mortgage and put food on the table, and we're trying to make Trump's face on Mount Rushmore. Like, this is seriously like what we're talking about. But I think what we've seen is the president doesn't even need to wait for that. He's added his name to the Kennedy Center. He's threatened to withhold money for major New York tunnel project unless you rename an airport and a train station after him. I think we're better than that. But it goes back to like, I want to have conversations of good faith with my Republican colleagues who actually believe it or vote for it and just understand why and try to change their hearts before organizing for the other stuff. That's right. That's right. So.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yep.
We're going to get to as many as we can. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I spoke to you at another town hall, and I listened to how you were saying, I'm grateful that you're pushing back on all the issues that you've talked about earlier. But in your talk, you mentioned the importance of trying to find common ground to a certain extent. So I wanted to throw out a question on a bipartisan issue, specifically Taiwan, and 2 bills like the Porcupine Act and the 6 Assurances Act, because a transactional president on foreign policy also puts a risk of another potential war that we don't want to declare or don't want to be a part of, as deterrence being a strategy. So that's what I was just throwing those policy questions and potential bipartisanship there.
Yeah, if I haven't connected you with, is Jack here tonight? So Jack is our foreign affairs expert. I have the privilege and honor of serving on foreign affairs. Actually went to Taiwan. I think we mentioned this at the last town hall, and they are an incredible partner. And we should be doing all that we can to make sure that we're not getting America into yet another war there. I'm deeply concerned about Chinese aggression, some of the military operations. And so if we can get you synced up with Jack, if you just wave again, we're happy to look through those specific pieces of legislation and support our partners over there. Thank you for your presence again tonight, too. Thank you.
Perfect. And we had another question over here in the second row. We're finishing the second row, so we're going row by row. So if anybody else in the second row has a question, great. If not, we're going to move on to the third row and keep going up. We've got Perry, we've got someone in the green in the second row here. Perfect.
I promise we'll get to you. I promise. I promise.
Yes, ma'am. We will come there.
2 quick ones, Congressperson. One is your thoughts on impeachment. We know we have a sociopath criminal in the White House. We also know we don't have the numbers to impeach, but I wonder if we happen to win the midterms, whether you'll be a supporter and a vocal supporter even prior to the midterms. The second question,
Sure.
please, really quickly, is with Iran. Did nothing to us, as far as I'm concerned. This is not war, this is murder. It's just outright murder. And as such, from my point of view, our president is a war criminal. I'd like to ask what your opinion is on that.
Well, I'll say the first to your first question, the best indicator of a future action is a present action, and I'm proud to have already voted to proceed on prior resolutions of articles of impeachment against this president. I called for the impeachment of Kristi Noem, but fortunately she was fired, so. But it's a serious issue, and I do think that the outcome of those attempts do matter greatly. Not to make it too simple, but the numbers matter. So whether or not he's actually ever impeached again, if Republicans are in control of the House, so long as that's the case, President Trump will never be impeached again. I do believe that will be different if Democrats take the House. And in addition to a whole number of other oversight opportunities. War is devastating. It is one of the most consequential decisions that a country can make. And it's why that decision making is vested with Congress. And no president should be allowed to take the sons and daughters of this country to kill the sons and daughters of other countries without authorization of the Congress. I voted for the War Powers Resolution that would have ended the war. Unfortunately, it was actually interesting. It failed in the Senate, so it would have failed regardless. But had all of there were enough Democrats that voted against it and Republicans that voted for it that it would have passed. But unfortunately, it did not. But this administration has articulated no strategy, no plan. Iran, the government, and the Ayatollah before, and the leaders are brutal. They are repressive. They killed at least tens of thousands of their own people. But we can't just throw bombs at countries and not articulate why, and not have a strategy, not just for executing a conflict, but what happens afterwards. And my fear, and I think your fear, is that we could do all of this, leave at some point, and it could be a country that is in turmoil, civil war. There could be the massacres of countless other people. And at the end of the day, it's going to take more people to say this is lawless, this is outside the bounds of the Constitution, it's wrong, for it to change. So I've been clear in my consistent opposition to the president unilaterally taking us to war. I do not think he made the argument. He spent 2 hours at the State of the Union rambling on about various things, making personal attacks to people who didn't share his political party. But I wasn't surprised. I went to the prayer breakfast. I was one of a few Democrats who went to the prayer breakfast. And I'll never forget this. The president was speaking, not praying, speaking. And he said, and there are a few Democrats here this year. Hopefully next year there will be none. I think if you, and this is just my faith tradition, if you have a heart of Christ, you are very thoughtful about sacrificing the lives of others, period. And that's my position on war.
Great, thank you. We're going to move to the third row here. We'll start with this gentleman on this side.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having this town hall. My name is Elijah. I'm a resident of Baltimore County in your district, hailing from Catonsville. I'm with the Baltimore Committee for Human Rights in the Philippines, which is a member organization of the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines. And I know we've spoken to your office about this. On January 1st, the Philippine military, using American-made weapons, carried out an attack in rural Mindoro in the Philippines on a community that a friend of mine, a Baltimore County resident, former UMBC student named Chantal Enicoche, was integrating in and learning from the rural indigenous folks that were there and the kind of conditions that they have to go through in modern Philippines. She was found by the same people that carried out this attack, the Philippine military, and kept in military detention for a month before she was finally released at the demands of people both in the Philippines and abroad, including here in Baltimore. I just want to highlight that. I know that we've spoken to your office about it, but I also want to highlight the broader issue at work there, which is American weapons. Helicopters produced by Lockheed Martin, 45 minutes down the road, deals made there in Bethesda. General Dynamic Hydra rocket pods used to fire indiscriminately on civilian populations. Sorry, I'm going over. This is the kind of state terror that drives the economic precarity, that drives migrants, Filipinos to become overseas workers here in the United States, including in the Port of Baltimore, where now 14 cruise ship workers have had to endure Customs and Border Patrol coming on and deporting them while they're trying to make money in extremely exploitative conditions to send back to their families. So I just want to know if you're going to call for an investigation and a cessation of those deportations and take a stand on the bombings in Mindoro.
Yeah, thank you for that and for your presence. If you haven't, maybe Jack was one of the folks you met with, but let's reconnect. Jack, you're the most popular guy in the room tonight, buddy. But I'm sorry your friend went through that. And I'm sorry that people that you know and are advocating for are going through that currently. So yes, I'd love to learn more about what's happening at the port and how we can be both at the federal level through a letter potentially, and or working with our partners at the port, our state partners. It's a state-owned facility to see if there's anything we can do locally about whether the state has an obligation to allow those actions to happen there. I think that the city of Baltimore, for example, recently signed an executive order that said that enforcement activities are not going to happen in city-owned facilities. So perhaps we could have a same conversation about the state as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good
Hi.
evening. My question is, with ICE pending or already here in Maryland, what protections are you offering your constituents against ICE?
Well, ICE has become a lawless agency. It's why I called for Secretary Noem's firing or impeachment. It's why I will not vote to give ICE another penny without at least significant reforms. But I will say that our office is here, and we want to hear from you if you or your community is being unfairly targeted, or if there are concerns. I will say that, one of the things I miss about being county executive is I used to be able to drive decisions and outcomes, and now I'm one of 435 members of Congress, and so trying to get that many people, my wife and I can't agree on what we're going to have for dinner most nights, so, but we want to be here for you, and we want to be here for your neighbors, and so I know that the county and the state have resources, particularly for our immigrant communities. I was proud as county executive, I created the first ever Office of Immigrant Affairs in Baltimore County, because we should be a welcoming place. And look, I want to say this. I think most people can agree that we should have a secure border. I think most people can agree that if you commit a violent offense and you're not serving time in a facility, that and if you're not a documented immigrant, that yes, you should be subject to deportation. But people who have been here for 20 years, who are raising our kids, who are feeding our communities, who are cleaning our hallways, the mass deportation stuff and the breaking up of families and the cruelty that we're seeing, and this goes back to the reforms are not radical. We want to see body cameras, which actually, in my experience, when I had the privilege of leading the Baltimore County Police Department, it was good. It was as good for the officers as it was for the community. Not deporting American citizens. I can't get my colleagues to agree to that as a term of the agreement. Not deporting American citizens. You have a Fourth Amendment right against illegal search and seizure. You don't know who's behind a door, so you should have a warrant to go into someone's house, period. Can't get agreement on that. But so I don't think any of these are radical ideas. Using de-escalation techniques, not conducting unnecessary, look, if you were actively chasing a suspect who is like a threat to the community, that's fine, but there's no reason we should be conducting operations in schools or places of worship. So those are the kinds of reforms that we're talking about, and they will make our communities safer. They will get us to a place where there is, and so that's what I'm trying to do in terms of the reforms. And I think we can focus on that conversation while still funding FEMA, TSA, Coast Guard. So yeah, that's what we're working on, but please let us know if we can be helpful too. So thank you.
Anyone else in the third row? If you raise your hand, we'll pass the mic to you. We'll come this way. Will is bringing you the mic right here.
And I promise I will try to be faster so we get to more questions. Come on down. Yeah, come on down. I got you.
Congressman, do you ever feel hopeful that the Trump administration will conduct business in a legal, fair, rational, non-greedy, and humane way?
Well, my initial reaction is 2 letters, but I want to say this. In all things, it is better to hope than despair. And so I am hopeful not about the president's heart or methods changing. My hope rests in whomever the next batch of members of Congress are. My hope rests in the fact that all of you are here and that you care enough about the lawlessness, you care enough about the self-enrichment, you care enough about your neighbors that you were here to have this conversation with me. And so, am I hopeful that he's going to change? No. But am I hopeful writ large? Yes. Because I believe in people. And at the end of the day, Congress is an institution of people. Like, we're neighbors, we're friends, right? And so, at the end of the day, if people can change and if hearts can be changed, and that means that Congress can change. And so I have to remain hopeful. It's the only way forward, and I hope that you can too. So, but thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Congressman. My name is Cynthia Sparks, and I am the founder of Mainline Maternity Care, which is a community-based business here in Baltimore County. I am also a registered NICU nurse, neonatal intensive care, at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Thank you, guys. And a lactation specialist, so I'm very passionate about providing human milk to human babies. Through Mainline Maternity Care, I provide evidence-based breastfeeding, maternal education, case management, and maternal mental health support. That being said, we have affiliations with the Judy Centers, which we will be building our 5th here in Randallstown soon, so happy about that. With the Curry Murray Nature Center to really get families back into nature as a way of helping to stabilize emotional support and maternal mental health support, as well as providing support for those families early in pregnancy and through the 2nd year of that child's life. That being said, I'm not sure if you're aware of the Maryland March of Dimes report card, which issues a D+ for Maryland as it relates to maternal morbidity mortality, as well as preterm births, with more than 80% of maternal deaths being preventable. So my question to you is, I'd value hearing your thoughts as it relates to any of those topics that I spoke about, as well as any priorities that you guys may have ready to go to support moms and babies here in Maryland a little bit better than we have been, and moving that D+ up.
Yeah. Thank you for all that you do, first and foremost. I want to make sure I connect you with Grace, who actually leads our healthcare portfolio in the office. So I will say part of this is I want to hear, whether it's Taiwan or healthcare, sometimes the best thing we can do is learn from the experts. And so, you know, I'm knowledgeable about a lot of things, but I'm no expert on maternal health care. And so I'd love to hear more about what I should be fighting for at the national level to help support your work and the work of your colleagues. I will say what's not helpful is gutting health care and food supports for millions of Americans. And so not having, I think that moves us backwards in really terrible ways, especially access to fresh, nutritious food. I was proud that in Baltimore County, we had universal school meals. We took away the stigma, breakfast, lunch. We did summer SNAP. We were feeding kids all the way up to age 18, all through this. I mean, just because at the end of the day, like, feed our kids, feed our seniors, feed our veterans. It's not hard. I don't know if you saw the report. There were Pete Hegseth just spent like tens of millions of dollars on a piano for his house and Alaskan king crab. Pretty much, yeah. But we can find. It goes back to we can find billions for bombs. To the gentleman's point, but we can't do anything about basics, and I think that frustrates the hell out of Americans, and rightfully so. You know, billions for bombs. That's only, by the way, driving up the cost of living. Gas prices are going up. Cost of goods are going to go up. As we're gutting your health care, as we're taking away your food supports, as we're erasing history and pretending like things didn't happen. Thank you, Danielle, for agreeing on that one. But I'd love to learn more specifically about what we can do. And so I'd invite Grace to have a conversation following up tonight. So thank you. Yeah,
Perfect.
sure.
Thank you. We are moving to the next row. We've got one here in the blue shirt. We'll go here, and then we're coming to our lady in the maroon. We'll come to you right after this gentleman here.
On deck.
Again, thank you for your time, Congressman. I am a retired veteran who served on Operation Enduring Freedom. And I want to thank all the veterans in the room and all the families of veterans. My question, and then I'd like to make a comment before you answer. My question is, what is the immediate action that can be taken to limit the war powers of this administration and its president? Simply because if people really looked into the geopolitics, Russia went to Ukraine saying that they would be done in about a month, and I believe we're still watching them fight in Ukraine. We said that, or should I say, an individual said that it would only take us a few days with this illegal war that's going on in Iran, and we know that China and North Korea are sitting on the sideline, and for anybody who has any military background at all, you know that once you deplenish your stockpile of weapons, it weakens your ability to sit at a table and negotiate against your enemies. So the cost burden of this war is about $1 billion a day. And it also affects our intermodal operations simply from the standpoint of the price of gas going up, but also that cost is going to be passed on the shelves of all of the supplies and the logistical chains that we need within this country. So I know I see that timer went down, but please help us to understand what can we do to stop this illegal war, because as far as I understand war from my 38 years of service, when you attack a sovereign country and you decimate and destroy its leadership, it is an act of war, whether you declared it or not. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. So the two biggest tools that Congress has is the War Powers Act, and this administration is trying to say that it doesn't apply they come up with all sorts of reasons, but Congress can still affirmatively vote through the War Powers Act to require hostilities and in any given location. I worry, my fear is that we very much, and the Secretary of Defense recently said this, that he wasn't ruling out boots on the ground. We've already lost, I believe, 7 service members. And so you think about that. It's my hope that if we continue down this road and we keep spending that $1 billion a day, we potentially are committing troops. We're seeing the impact at home, that people will change their mind about that vote. There are any number of war power resolutions that have been filed sequentially so that we have more opportunities to take that vote and to require the administration to stop. The second thing is funding. And I'm hearing through scuttlebutt that we are expecting a $50 billion supplemental appropriation. I don't know if that's going to be the amount. I don't know if that's going to be the only thing. But, you know, how do you ask for money for war when you're not taking care of things at home? How do you ask for money for war when it's not a legal war? And so I think that will be the next fight. The next fault line is when the Trump administration brings a supplemental budget to Congress and seeing whether or not we have the wherewithal. And look, I'll be candid. The last thing you want to do is be perceived as not supporting our troops and not providing the resources, because you and others didn't get to make the decision. You're just following the orders. But I think we have to stand on principle, and I think we have to sort of stand in truth and try to take those positions as we have those fights. But those are the 2 big areas. So, and I'd love to stay connected with you as well and learn from your experiences and perspective. So, thank you.
Thank you. So this is my first town hall meeting, and I was reluctant on coming because I have a dementia husband at home, 63 years old. But nevertheless, I came anyway, and I have my neighbor here with me, and I tried to get all my neighbors, but I'm here and so is my neighbor. Thank you for this town hall meeting. Thank you for allowing the opportunity to discuss many issues of the community. I know I hear everyone talking about Trump, but personally, no disrespect, I don't really want to talk about Trump. This is a forum for the community issue. There is a dangerous curve along Windsor Mill Road near the intersection of Rolling Road and Old Court. Visibility is very limited, and deer frequently jump out from an adjacent abandoned property, causing drivers to swerve. Several accidents have occurred, including vehicles leaving the roadway and striking utility poles, repeatedly requiring emergency personnel and public resources. What steps can be taken to improve safety on this stretch, such as installing speed bumps, blind spot mirrors, illuminating stop signs, or addressing the abandoned property with fencing to help prevent further accidents and to protect residents? I'm right on that stretch where there's a curve.
Sure.
And they come speeding there, and they hit the pole, and they just hit that pole, and they came through recently. You can see the skid marks. I'm right on the front of that. I don't want to see my dementia husband or I get injured, or any of my neighbors.
Yes, ma'am. Well, let's give you a round of applause for this being your first town hall. I appreciate you being here. Actually, these are the kinds of issues, Councilman Jones, that we love to hear about. And we did those actually when we were doing the budget town halls. And so what I will do is I will have Mandy, and I think you just talked to Perry there. We'll make sure we have your information if we don't already. We will follow up with Baltimore County government, who does that work. So Perry will get your information, and we will connect you with Baltimore County government to have them do an investigation as to whether or not we can do some speed calming and other things there.
Good evening, Congressman.
Good evening.
I have two questions. Federal law requires constituents to be at least 3/4 a mile from a bus stop in order for service to operate in said area, and I'm talking about MT mobility. There are people in our area with disabilities who don't have equitable access to transportation since they're outside the service area. So what necessary steps are being taken by you and MTA to ensure that all individuals with disabilities have access to equitable transportation in our area? And secondly, Owings Mills Boulevard, as you drive down, it's very dark. You can barely see when it's nighttime. There's deer, kind of like what she said earlier, it's deer, it's very unsafe. So is there any steps that can also be taken to ensure there's at least some light on Owings Mills Boulevard, which is a main road in our county, to ensure that people drive safe?
I appreciate those questions, and I'll have Will or Mandy get your information. So MTA is a state-run agency, and we'll have to find out if it's a county or state roadway, but we're happy to make sure we facilitate those conversations. Our office can't direct changes to those policies, but we are happy to make sure that we facilitate those conversations. They are important conversations, and we thank you for raising them tonight.
Perfect, thank you. We'll go to the right side of the room on the fourth row. Oh, there we go.
Thank you for coming. Great to see you again. I met you my name's Sarah, by the way. I'm an alum of Towson High School 2023. I met you at the 2022 Randallstown parade. You really showed your support for high school students and for BCPS students as a whole. I wanted to know, considering the presence of ICE in our communities and the ongoing protests that have been going on at middle and high schools in Baltimore County, what are you doing to ensure trust from our young people and first-time voters, especially ones that are about to turn 18 before this midterm election, so that they feel confident in your ability to keep us safe in our communities, especially the parents of children in our schools?
Well, thank you for your presence. It's good to see you again. I will say that we are doing everything that we can to coordinate. And first of all, I'm so proud of our young people. We should listen, and we should listen to our young people. You all have important things to say and to share, and shame on us if we're not listening to you and working with you. I will say that in addition to fighting for the reforms that we talked about earlier, our office works closely with the governor and County Executive Klausmeier at the state and local level. And I will say that we're lucky that in Maryland we have a governor and we have local leaders, our county executives, our mayors, our council members, our state reps who really are prioritizing this. So I have a great deal of confidence that Maryland elections will be safe and secure. My fear to the question earlier is I don't know how that's going to play out in the rest of the country. It will require, I think, a level of bravery and courage for especially, and look, this has happened in the past, but having Republican elected secretaries of state, et cetera, in places like, why am I blanking on the Southwest state? Arizona, thank you. Who said, no, we're gonna do the count right, and we're not gonna be bullied and intimidated, and having governors of all stripes say, this is about getting it right. So I feel very confident and comfortable saying in Maryland, I have very limited concerns, but we're working with organizations and trying to make sure that there is national protections in place and people ready to act, if that's not the case in other states.
Good evening, Congressperson. I wanted to ask again about the Iran situation. As you mentioned, 4 Democratic Congresspeople had voted against the War Powers Resolution, and with that vote, it could have been 216 to 215 and would have actually gone the other way. Do you have any intention or plan to speak to those 4 Democratic Congresspeople? And then I had a second follow-up question that was slightly unrelated regarding the situation in Cuba. The president has expressed repeated interest in what seems like another hostile takeover of a foreign nation, and he's been ramping up that speech, I think, largely as a result of his success in Venezuela and now Iran. Is there any rumblings in Congress right now to do something more about that, given that he seems to be accelerating his attempts to garnish his own power?
Thanks for that. I'll work backwards and say I will continue to refuse to give this president any blank check for any war. I will not give him a blind trust that he has not earned, whether that's in Iran or Cuba or anywhere else. I was actually on CNN earlier this week and was asked point blank about the other, my Democratic colleagues and their votes, and I said I could not disagree more with their positions. And so to the extent those opportunities arise to have those conversations, we'll let them know. But it goes back to why we need to have relationships within our caucus too, so that I can build a relationship and say, I really want to understand why you think this is okay. Because as you pointed out, had those 4 Democrats voted differently, that the War Powers Resolution would have passed, at least in the House. And I think it would have sent a strong message, even if the Senate resolution wasn't there. And would make the president, I would hope, would make the president and his administration think a little bit more about how they're conducting, what they're doing, and before going into Cuba. And so I think we have to continue to raise our voices against those actions together.
Yes, hello, how are you? Thank you for being here today. I want to just piggyback on what Ms. Wilson was talking to you about. I have a daycare on Child Care Windsor. It's very successful daycare. It's been there for almost 26, actually longer than that. I took it over 26 years ago. And Windsor Mill Road, I don't know if anybody knows Windsor Mill Road, it's like the Audubon. They are flying up and down that road all day long, all night. There's been so many accidents, and I have a daycare there, which I'm afraid that one of these kids are going to run. And I've had close encounters where a kid would run towards Windsor Mill Road and trip. Thank God they tripped, because if they didn't, they would have been gone. Okay, so it's very dangerous road. We've had signs up school crossing, but for some reason it's been wiped out again by cars, and they never put it back up there. They have a school up the street now, Windsor, what is that? What is that? There you go, Windsor Mill Middle. They have a school up the street that they just recently, it's fairly new. Okay, we need speed bumps or we need something. They have blown out my mailbox. They've rolled up on my hill at my daycare on top of the sign, knocked down my signs. I also own the farm next to it, okay? I own a whole lot of property there. They just recently wiped out the whole fence. Thank God my animals are on the other side, but they wiped that out. My dog was lost for 2 days. Yeah. I mean, it's really, really a hazardous road. It's been hazardous for years and years and years, and nobody has done nothing, okay? I'm also retired police for 20 years. Yeah. I talked to the colonel, yeah. And she, they had radar on that road for a long time, and they stopped. We need speed bumps, we need signs, we need something, because I'm afraid a kid or somebody's going to get killed.
Yeah, I was going to say, in addition to talking to the county about speed reduction tools, we can also talk to the captain of the precinct. So we'll make sure we have both of your information and make that connection as well. Mandy, can I pull a little bit of an audible here?
You can, sir.
Is it possible that if you have a question, can we try to speed round it, and I will try to get to as many questions as we possibly can? So if you want to just stand maybe, and then we'll just like run through. If we can commit, because you see a lot of hands. So I want to try to say, if you all can commit to like a 30-second question, I'll try to commit to a 30-second answer, and then we can just sort of roll through.
Perfect. Yes, we were going to give a flag. We've got about 10, 15 minutes left. So if you stand, we'll go ahead and do quick round speed questions, and we'll go through there. So we'll start with Claire.
Don't worry, I'm about to throw you a curveball. My name is Stephanie. I am a lifelong resident of Baltimore County. I currently reside in Owings Mills. I am a queer, non-binary trans person who has experienced firsthand this joke of an administration trying to erase my personhood and existence. And just things just keep happening and nothing surprises me anymore. So my question to you is, what more can be done to help stop this assault on trans people that is happening at every level of the government?
I want to start by saying I see you, and I value you, and I'm glad that you're here. We have to fight back. I mean, we've voted against some awful and cruel pieces of legislation in the Congress, and we have to keep supporting our local and state leaders who are creating an environment, at least here in Maryland, where communities that have been attacked by this administration can be just a little bit safer. And then ultimately, we have to elect people who understand the imperative of not marginalizing and not pushing people to the side. So you've got my pledge. We're going to keep fighting for you and so many others. So thank you.
Good evening, Congressman. My name is Pearl Kirby, and of course, I'm in the Randallstown area. My question is regarding federal employees. Maryland has one of the highest number of federal employees. This is the second time that we've had a government shutdown. It's not fair to the people that are doing their jobs but are not getting paid. We have congressmen who continue to get paid while local people are not being paid. They can't take care of their families. They can't take care of their children. We have a Congress that is a do-nothing Congress that is not thinking about the people that they represent. Something needs to be done. Mr. T does not have all of the power. Congress should be able to overstep and make sure that those federal employees that are working every single day to protect the United States, to protect the airports and other federal jobs are being serviced and being paid. Let's do something for our people.
Hear, hear. I will just add that I was one of the first members of Congress that said during the last government shutdown, I will not take a penny until our federal workers are paid. And if this one drags on, I will do the same thing.
Good evening, Congressman Olszewski. My name is Diana Bergman, and I'm from Carroll County. I want to first thank you for giving much-needed resources to Carroll County. I've watched the work that you've been doing. My question is very simple. Currently, with this unlawful war, we have a lot of U.S. Americans stationed and placed right now in unsafe, hostile territory. They haven't been able to return back home. There's a lady that's been documenting, she's been stuck over there and she went for a wedding and she's a U.S. citizen and hasn't been able to return. What is your plan to bring people back home and safely in this current time that we don't know who's going to be targeted next?
It's a great question, and it reinforces all the concerns that have been raised about this war. One more consequence has been that there's been absolutely no plan for Americans who are stranded in the Middle East. And the State Department didn't begin developing a plan until the morning of the war with Iran. And so we are pushing the State Department to do whatever they can. In my opinion, the response has been woefully inadequate. There is a STEP hotline that we're happy to share with you and others that they haven't already signed up to get folks out of the conflict area, but it's been completely unacceptable. We've had 0 hearings. I've been pushing for my chairman and for the speaker to have us in Washington. Like, we are at war, and we're not having any discussions with the people conducting that war. Again, this goes back to Congress not conducting its oversight responsibility. It's wrong. We're going to keep pushing for it, and I assure you that if things are different come next year, that we will be in Washington holding a lot of accountability over an oversight hearing. So thank you for that, and thank you for your service.
Yes. Over here.
Oh, hi.
Thank you for coming. Quick question. Why did you vote to venerate Charlie Kirk through your support of Charlie Kirk Day, and do you regret that vote?
I appreciate the question. I don't venerate Charlie Kirk. I think his rhetoric is awful. I don't condone it, but I'd be happy to walk through the resolution itself, which the resolve clauses were really about condoning political violence. And I will tell you that as someone who has been the subject of violent political threats, especially since serving in this role. I reject and condemn political violence of all stripes. Our society can have no place for it. And so while it's regrettable that there was some language that I think was more glowing about some of Mr. Kirk's rhetoric that I don't agree with, I do stand by the decision to condemn political violence. And so as much as I disagreed with Mr. Kirk's positions, he never should have been killed for it. And so it was hard for some of those reasons, but ultimately I made the decision that it was important for me in a moment where, and not just him, but the assassination of the Minnesota lawmakers, the attack on Speaker Pelosi's husband, that it was important for me to reject political violence in all forms. So I appreciate the question, and I hope that you feel like the answer is given with a sincerity and an earnestness with which you asked the question as well. So thank you.
Just remember, we're in lightning speed round. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lene Higgins. I'm from Owens Mills. I'm a former BCPS educator of 6 years and a current BCPS parent. I've seen students...
We're very similar in that regard.
I think you did 7, I did 6.
Yeah. Both parents still now, too.
I've seen students struggle with mental health as an educator. I even lost a couple of students because of their mental health struggles. Maryland currently ranks 40th out of 50 states when it comes to the state of mental health report by Mental Health America. So I want to know, what are your conversations that you and your colleagues are having about improving youth mental health, because it's a serious problem in this country?
Thank you for that. And I'm sorry for those you've lost. I will say, in addition to the resources, and I would say normalizing that it's okay to talk to a therapist, for example, and providing the tools and the resources for young people. The other piece of the conversation, and I think this is a place where, as a member of Congress, I want to step into and lean more, and I also want to connect you with Grace so we can learn more about what your thoughts are. We have to do more about social media. Social media and artificial intelligence is not only driving up the cost of our electric bills, it is doing great harm to our young people, especially our young women. And so as a father of a 10-year-old little girl, I take the concerns very seriously about what social media, what artificial intelligence is doing to the mental health of our young people. And so if you have other thoughts or ideas that we should be pursuing, I'd love to talk more. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Audrey, and building on the ability passed for careers in technology training, I work at the Community College of Baltimore County, and we do amazing things in all the amazing departments, but I am with the Department of Maritime, focused on building the Baltimore port and its workforce. There's currently a bill, the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Bill with the statute of the James M. Hoff National Defense Act. CCBC is one of only 30 national maritime excellence designees in domestic maritime training. And if that bill passes, there's more than $30 million that will go to those 30 schools that will help us with short-term training at affordable or no cost to Marylanders, because we're one of the only maritime schools, you don't just have to be in the county, that will not just produce jobs. This will produce family-sustaining careers, high-paying jobs. It will build up our maritime industry in Baltimore. And a lot of people don't know. For example, our college is tasked with training 100 ship captains, because we need barge captains to move all those pieces in and out to build that bridge. This all falls under that Appropriations Act, which we do understand is coming from the other side of the aisle. So
sure.
I don't even need a response. I just want to respectfully ask that you and your staff take a good, long, hard look at that and consider whether or not it's good for Maryland.
Since it's an appropriations thing, I'll connect you to Isabel who's back there, if you want to just swap information. And that is building on the work that we did to make CCBC tuition free for 98% of all Baltimore County residents, which is great.
Testing. Good evening. This is Jen Blaylock. I'm with Indivisible Baltimore County. I wanted to touch super briefly on, well, thank you, the local things that we can do for immigrant communities. One thing is backing our neighbors up with a budget for year 2027. So please reach out to your county council members and ask them to fund the Office of Immigrant Affairs. Moving on to congressional oversight, I wanted to thank you for going to the Fallon Building yesterday and performing your oversight duties, despite Marylanders seemingly disappearing overnight from the building. I wanted to ask, as I believe that in this year, progressive leaders are going to win back our Congress. When that happens, I would like to know specific measures that you will be working on for the purpose of immigration reform. So specifically, do you have any intentions of a registry? And if so, how would you protect individual privacy while Trump and his cabinet remain in power? Thank you.
I will say this is a space where also, again, we want to talk to our partners, we want to talk to our experts and make sure that we're getting it right. You know, what's interesting is we talked about a path to citizenship something like 20 years ago. And the bills that would have paths to citizenships were like 10-year paths to citizenship. So had we passed legislation 20 years ago, many of the individuals who are being targeted now by this lawless Trump administration, and particularly ICE and CBP, would already be citizens. And so we have to find a way, I think, to really sort of lift up the dignity of individuals. And so we want to partner with you and others to make sure that we do that, especially in that space. So thank you. And thanks for sharing ideas about what people can do.
Just a reminder to keep it to 30 seconds, please. Thank you. You can go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Congressman, for this meeting. I would like to follow up on the question of war and peace. Yeah. And my question is, should we declare war against Iran? Because anybody who believes this is only going to be 90 days, there's no way. And funding, that's really irrelevant. The fact is, we've committed an act of war against a jihadist republic who has terrorist organizations all over the world, including in this country. October 7th in Israel, basically Hamas is the surrogate of Iran. And I'm worried we're going to get a body count, not only of U.S. service people, but we're going to get a big body count when the terrorist cells are activated and when they are actually doing terrorism. We have a group with 9/11 mentality and the jihad. That's what that regime is all about.
Thank you.
Next. Right there. Perfect.
Testing. Congressman, my first town hall.
Welcome. Let's give you a round of applause. Thank you for joining.
I am one of those federal employees that's working right now without a paycheck. So we're in week number 4, and I have been designated as accepted, meaning that I won't be paid until the shutdown ends. Most of my coworkers, they've been declared exempt, so, you know, good for them, right? But, you know, there's about 6,000 of us at my agency who won't get paid until this is over. So I just want to express my concern and my desire for a speedy resolution.
I appreciate that. Which agency are you?
CBP.
CBP, okay. Thank you.
Will?
I guess I have the floor. Thank you for your time tonight, Congressman. I'm an environmental science educator in Howard County, but I grew up in Ocean City where my father tirelessly worked for offshore wind. And I know that the House has already voted on reducing protections for the boundary waters in Michigan. And I'm very concerned that with the passing in the Senate, that they could be looking at us in Maryland now for coastal waters and drilling. My question to you is, what can be done to prevent those companies from coming in? And being that Maryland has already allocated that money, but money being held, when can we see that money potentially rolling in for those offshore wind farms?
It's a great question, and unfortunately we've seen any number of renewable energy projects, especially in Democratic-led states, cut. The president has allowed funding to flow in other states for a lot of these projects, and so this is one of the places where we're hoping the courts step in and say, no, this has already been allocated funding. You cannot stop money after it's been, Congress has the power of the purse. So the courts is actually our best existing option. We're going to keep having the conversations with our colleagues, and hopefully if the composition of Congress is different, next cycle we'll also be able to do more there. So thank you very much.
How you doing? Me and my wife, Liberty Manners Association, we supported you for numbers of years. So my question is, are we still a body of people? Because it seems like that we all are separated and we all go our own way, but we don't pull together as a community or as the people as well. Liberty Manners Association been doing the work in the community for a number of years. We need more volunteers, people to come out and be proud of the work and help out with the young kids that's in the community, because they the ones that's actually getting hurt. And also, as well as that retirement, I'm 65 years old, right? And I'm supposed to be I'm on my way to retirement, but I'm scared to retire because I don't know what the future is. And then the COVID, we still have people that lost during COVID trying to recover. Yeah. Now this is coming in, it makes it even more difficult. Where do you stand on helping us get where we need to go as a body of people?
I stand alongside you in this room, in your churches, in your mosques and synagogues, and on the streets. So let us know what else we can do to be helpful. We want to make sure that our office of our district team has information. So as you're having events, as you're doing things, as we can be helpful, we want to be present with you. And so thank you for standing with us and for the great work you all do. We appreciate you being here.
Good evening, Congressman. My name is Niels. I am a community leader within the African immigrant community in the county and the state. I'll go back to immigration. My question is, and I want to thank you, commend you for pushing for all the reforms, the immigration reforms that need to happen. However, I think that some of the reforms could be unrealistic given the current climate and the stance of this administration. What I would suggest is maybe to push for basic things. Like right now, they've stopped making decisions on any application. So we have hundreds of people who have been in the line waiting for a decision, but now all decisions are paused, right? And also when ICE picks up members of our community, there is a requirement in the law that they have to justify. If they don't have a warrant, at least they have to justify the reason for detention. So basic things like that, I feel like now would help our communities better, and we can push for reforms hopefully in November when things get better.
And we'd love to partner with you to talk about what some of those might actually be. So if we can get your information and connect
and
with
I'll work with Jack from your office.
Oh, okay.
It's been very helpful.
Great. I know we've got a few more. We're really running against time, so if we can try to be super quick. I want to make sure we get to y'all, but
we've got 3 more.
And to those who are heading out, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate you guys. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for making yourself available for this type of forum. My question is about the Randallstown community. Wiley's Funeral Home is planning on building a crematorium in this area which is a residential area. They plan on burning bodies from 9 to 5, 6 days a week. Some noted concerns are potential health risks, potential air quality concerns from pollutants, odors, emissions, potential negative impact on property values, and the emotional and psychological impact of having a facility for death and dying nearby. Also, well water. They really don't know what's going to happen when they burn bodies. They're saying it's safe, but we really don't have an air quality census back.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that there's a 1,000-foot rule where you cannot build a crematorium unless it's 1,000 feet away from a residential area. We have schools, we have health facilities, and all of the homes. What can we do about that?
So we will, nothing that I can do federally, but we will connect you with the state regulators and local officials, so their zoning, their state regulations, and we'll make sure the district office connects you with the folks who regulate at that level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Congressman. My question is going to be real quick. On the Save America Act, is it true that this strict voter ID that will be required is really targeted against married women? Because if their last name does not match their ID, which most likely it will not, because it will not match their birth certificate. Is that the gist of this act?
That's one of many concerns, yes, ma'am. And we're happy to talk to you more about the specific provisions and why it's so problematic. Thank you.
Good evening, Congressman. As a federal employee who has dedicated her life to serving the career, dedicated her life to protecting this nation, why are we being used as bargaining chips to advance policy objectives? How is withholding pay from executing essential national security missions an appropriate tool for policy negotiations? And if Congress believes that certain policies within DHS require reform, why punish the entire workforce rather than addressing those specific policies through proper legislative channels? I work for CBP.
Well, look, I appreciate you guys being here and asking the question. I don't love that employees and real families and real people are feeling the result of it. I do want to minimize the conversation to my concerns, which is why I've co-sponsored legislation, as I mentioned earlier, about FEMA and Coast Guard. But I also have an obligation, and I know that you've heard this here tonight, the people I represent are deeply concerned about what happened in Minnesota. I cannot, in good conscience, be okay with a secretary who calls someone who's killed by a federal agency a domestic terrorist. And so I think these reforms are needed. Sir, I hope that we can resolve them quickly. I don't think that they are, again, extreme. These are best practices in law enforcement in many places. I don't want to see it drag on. I would much rather see the reforms adopted. But I mean, I hope that we've also heard the concerns here about why people feel so strongly about the need for them. And, I hope that we can have this resolved quickly and get to supporting your family. So thank you.
Okay. Hello, Congressman. What safeguards is in place in Maryland to protect us at the polls during the midterms? I ask this because I'm afraid that the Trump administration will place the military or ICE agents at the polls as a form of intimidation in an effort to suppress the vote.
We're going to rely on state, local election officials, leaders. I will be out there at the polls with you and with others. We're going to rely on community members speaking up and organizing, and we're going to rely on courts ruling if these types of actions are taken. Part of the challenge is not knowing what those assaults on democratic institutions or our voting polls might look like, but I think being ready and vigilant to respond to them, and I assure you we will be. So All right, I think we're...
we have the last two questions.
Last two,
and then,
okay.
Then 30 seconds, please.
John, first time town hall. Appreciate everything you're doing here. Very interesting debate. I am an independent voter, very open-minded, and I like what I've heard tonight. Pretty cool. I do have a problem with the respect to the enormity of the job that you are facing, and I do appreciate that, the magnitude of it. My quick question, Congress has got such a low dismal approval rating. Last year it was in the low teens. This year it's in the mid-20s. Alluding back to your question about being hopeful for change, the only change I could ever see that would alter that paradigm would be term limits. Do you think that's a reasonable solution?
I support term limits for Congress and for the United States Supreme Court. I think that we should be able to go in there, do our jobs, serve our country, and let a new generation of leaders come behind us. Now, what the length is, the number of terms, et cetera, I'm sort of open to that, but if there were a reasonable bill on the floor for term limits, I would absolutely support it.
Good evening. I'm Linda Dorsey Walker. How are you? Just want to talk a bit of economics and how we grow this state's economy. I hope people are in favor of that. 90% of the world's food supply is dependent upon the creation and use of nitrogen. It's important to it. Nitrogen can be gleaned from liquefied natural gas. Yeah, remember that liquefied natural gas line that people fought against? We could glean 2 different really valuable gases from those liquefied natural gas lines by putting caps on each one. One is helium, and we are woefully short of helium worldwide, and also nitrogen. Nitrogen, once it's gleaned, produces ammonia. Ammonia is necessary for urea, and 1/3 of the world's urea supply is now in Iran. So unless we come up with a solution soon to what's going on in the Middle East, they're sitting on 1/3 of the urea supply, and urea is critical for producing fertilizer needed for the world food supply. So we have an opportunity here in Maryland to capture, by putting caps on those natural gas lines, both helium and also nitrogen. Can you do something about that and create a new economic source for Maryland?
Would love to work with you on that, Linda, so thank you for raising that issue. I will say, if you're looking for manure, we have it in abundance in our nation's capital. So I think this is our last question of the evening, and then we'll wrap.
Good evening, Mr. Congressman. It's admirable that I get to speak to a PhD recipient from my alma mater, but not as admirable.
Go Retrievers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But not as admirable that I'm speaking to a recipient of nearly $200,000 in donations from the pro-Israel lobby. Anyways, I wanted to ask about your thoughts and opinions on the state's redistricting legislation currently being held up in the MGA. I know the latest development today has been the U.S. House Minority Leader visiting the state Senate President to push for this redistricting. So how do you think this new redistricting map will be fairly representative of all Marylanders while ensuring that it will elect somebody that will stop Trump's agenda? Thank you.
I appreciate the question. I will say the president has started a race to the bottom when it comes to redistricting. And the only thing that Donald Trump has proven to me in this space is that we need national redistricting reform that, among other things, prevents mid-decade redistricting. I think we should be looking at national reforms about things like independent commissions so that we have fair elections everywhere. And I'm pushing my Republican colleagues who are so upset about these Democratic states punching back to join us. Because guess what? There was a bill, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, that actually had these reforms in them. Not one Republican in the House voted for them. And so I'm hopeful that we can find a bipartisan consensus federally. In Maryland, look, I'm ready to, I was ready to run in whatever district was drawn for me, because I believe that what we're fighting for is important. I believe that what we're doing is worthy of consideration by the voters. But I think that the governor and the Senate president have a fundamental disagreement. And I just don't, my candid answer is I don't see it being resolved. And so I understand why Democrats have punched back. I was frankly pleased to see it. I hope that it all leads to a larger reform nationally so that we don't have states that are all, 95, 100% of either party. I want to see fair, competitive districts everywhere, because good ideas should win, and decency should be able to win. And I think that that's what we're missing in our politics. And so I'm going to keep pushing for that in Congress. And if things change in Maryland, I love Maryland's 2nd Congressional District. I'm honored to be your congressman. But if that district changes, I'm ready to do whatever we got to do, because this is, I think, one of those moments where everything's on the line. I'll end with this. I had the privilege last year of going to Selma, Alabama for the 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And I had the privilege and honor of walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and to reflect upon some of those civil rights leaders who are fortunately still with us, to tell their stories and recount what they went through fighting for what was the moral equivalent of, I think, today. And, there were attack dogs, there were police beatings, there were fire hydrants, people were arrested. And I look at what's happened today, and all we're being asked for is to vote the right way, or to show up to a town hall, or call out things on social media. And so if people could have that level of courage 60 years ago to risk their livelihoods, to be physically attacked in the ways that they were, I sure hope that we can stand up in this moment and support organizations that are fighting back in the courts, that we can stand up side by side in the community, and that we can find solutions in the United States Congress to move us better together. So thank you all so much for coming out tonight. It is a privilege and honor, and let's keep working together to turn this ship around. God bless everybody. Thank you.